hospitality. We're gonna die out here. You said so yourself.
We were supposed to be exchanged, not sent to another prison.
Suppose so.
This ain't no way to be treating men.
What we need is trickery. We need to find a way to steal ourselves right out of this camp.
Y'all better get up and come inside.
You're contraband, Jim. They will hang you.
It's like Mr. Joseph say. We all got a purpose.
When are you people ever gonna learn? You ain't never gonna be.
I is too free.
No, you ain't, boy.
There's a lot of freed and escaped slaves. Help folks out along the way. Follow directions. You'll be all right.
Michael Davis is the producer of numerous projects, including the film you just saw, a film that challenges us all to never forget the gut-wrenching sacrifices of slaves who traveled the Underground Railroad. Welcome to the Harvey Show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Michael, just watching that, I mean, just such intense drama there and that time period. I mean, you're taking a chance anytime you deal with an issue like race and slavery and what happened during the Civil War. I mean, what made you want to do a movie like this one?
Well, primarily because it was written by Joseph Hoover. We actually have his diaries. And so the film is actually based directly from those diaries. And, you know, he talks about how he was saved. And what makes this story interesting is that it wasn't just, you know, we've heard a lot of oral traditions of the Underground Railroad. There are not a lot of written documents that talk about it. So that made it interesting. But even more so, here we have slaves helping Northern Union soldiers get back to freedom. And this whole story is about how he escaped a prisoner of war camp in Florence, South Carolina, and him and his buddy basically end up on a plantation. And if it weren't for the slaves, they wouldn't have made it. And they ended up walking through the woods for about 5 weeks and were helped, you know, through a chain of people, you know, go here, go there, till they finally got to New Bern, North Carolina.
Wow. Sounds like a, you know, these unearthed treasures that we don't ever see until there's a movie made about them. And, you know, you can list dozens of movies right now that kind of tell the story of heroes that we never knew. How did these documents kind of come to light?
Well, I had actually produced another film called Destiny Road in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And after that production, you know, it's a small town, and all these trucks came in, and we were doing this whole thing. And one of the descendants of Joseph Hoover, who had the diaries, approached me and said, "I'd like to talk to you." And at first, I was very skeptical, to be honest. And then she pulled out this Tupperware with all his medals and photos and the diaries. And then she said, "Well, you know, my cousin, and they've been working on this for about 15 years, and they had all his war documents. They had his medical records. You know, he actually got shot after this incident that we tell in Union Bound, and found the guy that shot him, took him prisoner, and saved some buddies. And in the end, he received the Medal of Honor for his bravery, which we don't go into in this film. Maybe if the film does well, we'll do a sequel kind of thing. But because he wrote, they believe 3 diaries, 2 of them survive today.
That's amazing.
So we, you know, that when I started reading that, and I just started looking at it, and you start looking at, you know, the history books, and you can go to the Andersonville. He was taken to Andersonville prison, and you look at on the record,
and
his name is there.
Record
and his name is there. And then you go to the history books, and you look at the 121 New York volunteers that he was a member of, and there's his name, Joseph Hoover. And it just over and over, you know, this guy really was there. And so I was just sucked in. You know?
Okay, so how many films have you produced?
I've done about 8 films.
So when you do films, and a lot of filmmaking is make-believe. It's not based on fact. It's, you know, we get a chance to escape and we are entertained. But how was it, I mean, was it fulfilling for you to actually tell a real life story?
I think it was more fulfilling because it's almost like I tell people, say, how long did it take make the movie? I said, well, 151 years, because he wrote it 150 years ago, and then we just made the film, right? So it's one of those stories that just I felt like it needed to be told. And what's amazing is, you know, when we made it, we really didn't realize a lot of where society would be today, and all of this, you know, controversy of race and color that's happening in this country. And here we have I was watching some program and they were saying, you know, we need more movies about how people of different races work together and for a common goal. And I'm like, I have one. I just made it. You know, it's union bound. And it's about, you know, a slave and two white guys, you know, working together for a common good. They came together. It didn't matter, you know, they wanted to help each other get to freedom. And that's something that I think society today needs to hear, is an uplifting story of people from different backgrounds, different regions, even maybe different religions and different, you know, race and color and all that, working together and stop fighting and, you know, try to find common ground.
When you did the reading and the research and the pouring through all this provenance of Hoover and his diaries, were you able to pick up then the nuances of his emotions and affections and the personal connection that there were between these men? A
little bit. He really wasn't. He was a very pragmatic person. He was very consistent. His diary is almost every day. I don't think he missed but a few days where he didn't write in his diary. But a lot of them are very tedious, like, you know, I lent a pair of socks to this guy, or so-and-so borrowed $5 from me, you know, and then other days we marched for 12 hours, you know, things like that, very mundane. And he doesn't always get into the emotional side of things, but when he escapes, he talks about Jim Yong, who is the slave that saved him, and talks about how, you know, he was instrumental in that. So there are some glimpses, but not very many.
That's what I wanted to know. What do we learn about Jim Yong through his eyes?
Well, even in the movie, he says, you know, you're the bravest man I ever met, because, you know, he put everything on the line. He's truly the hero of this story. You know, it's, when you look at it, he's the guy that put his life on the line for two guys that he didn't even know. He didn't know those guys. They came onto his plantation. The lady that owned she was a widow, Miss McIntosh, who was a real person. She sent for a posse to come get him. And Jim, you know, if you were a slave, you pretty much lived on that plantation. If you ran, you were called contraband. You could be hung. You could have been killed, or taken back into slavery or whatever. And so they didn't really know a lot about the surrounding area. You know, 5-10 miles from their plantation, it was unknown territory.
Foreign territory, yeah.
And so for him to just say, let's go, let's run, he's given up everything. He put, you know, so to me, that he is amazing for what he did to be able to save these two guys.
Talk a little bit about, kind of give a re-education on the Underground Railroad. Were any slaves ever killed during that time of traveling that you know of?
I don't know that, but I do know that the Underground Railroad Museum and the Smithsonian have looked at these diaries, because they're they're very, you know, interesting in the notion. Even met with the curator of the History Museum of North Carolina, who's done quite a bit of work on the Civil War. And he said, you know, Mike, this is really remarkable that these survived and talk about this, because he goes, I don't know of any other document that actually talks about this.
Michael, you mentioned, you know, where we stand today culturally, socially, society here in the United States and around the world. What are really some of your hopes and intentions or expectations, dreams, the impact that Union Bound can make in our society today?
Well, I hope it brings people together. I mean, I hope it helps show that, you know, even in one of the worst, perhaps the worst time of this country, people could come together and work together, regardless, again, of their race or color. And, you know, it was a horrible time. You know, slavery, we all abhor it, of course. But even in that situation, there were glimpses of good moments. And here's a good, I feel like it's a story that can inspire people, it can motivate people, it can bring people together. And I think that's part of what we're trying to tell here, is that, you know, we can, as a society, respect each other for who we are, our backgrounds, and let's live in more harmony as opposed to nitpicking about different things all the time.
Yeah.
Where was the film shot?
It was shot primarily in North Carolina, in Durham. There's a historical site called Stagville Plantation, who I always have to thank because they are so wonderful. It was the largest plantation home in North Carolina. They had over 900 slaves. So everything that was shot in the film, one of the things that we had a great deal of care of is the authenticity from the wardrobe that they wore. Those guys actually wore wool uniforms in 90-degree weather for 6 weeks. We had several people actually have dehydration issues because it was so hot and we're in the woods and all this. But it was shot on this plantation. The slave quarters are the actual slave quarters that have been been maintained and preserved. And then we shot the opening sequence was shot at the actual reenactment of the Battle of the Wilderness in Virginia, where Joseph Hoover was captured. And so we actually shot the 150th celebration of that event, and we had about 7,000 extras there. And then there's one scene, a couple of days that we shot in Edenton, North Carolina. So mostly in North Carolina.
Who should see this film, Michael?
I'm sorry?
Who? Who should, the audience?
Who should go see it?
Yes.
I think anybody that's interested in, I think obviously we've gotten a lot of support from people that love history and the Civil War.
Right.
But I think it's a movie that families should go see together. I think I've told people, you know, if you have someone of a different race, maybe go, you know, do a double date, go on, you know, go do something a little bit different. Take some friends and go see this, because I think it's hopefully will inspire people to a new level of community and respect.
I know that we've got just a minute or so left, but tell us about the book, Union Bound.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the movie, but the book, and also the Union Bound tour.
Yeah, the book is actually coming out May 2nd, and it's already available on Amazon and all those places. You can go to Amazon, just hit Union Bound, and it'll pop up. You can buy it on WND Books at the Superstore there, and it comes out May 2nd. The movie comes out April 22nd. The book comes out May 2nd, and then on May 11th, we're doing a 15-city tour of a live performance of Union Bound. Tank Jones, who plays Jim Yong, is going to host, and we've got several country music stars who are going to sing music from the Civil War and inspired by Union Bound, as well as we're going to show the movie. It's a movie and music experience.
Wow.
In more of a stage setting. And we've had artifacts from the Civil War. The diaries are traveling with us.
Wow.
We'll have a whole setup with the actual wardrobe from the movie, so people can see kind of what's
pretty cool.
You know, what that was all about.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michael just shared with us several dates. If you cannot remember those dates, April 2nd, May 2nd, and May 11th.
Yes.
Just go to unionboundthemovie.com for more information, or to get, you know, movies. I guess it'll release nationwide?
It releases nationwide, about 300 screens. Unionboundthemovie.com has a listing.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you all the locations right now, but if you go to unionboundthemovie.com, under theaters, I think it has a listing by state, and then and just click on it. It will tell you the actual location, the address, and I think you can buy tickets on fandango.com.
Okay, so he said it all. I don't have to say anything else. You know where to go. Unionboundthemovie.com. Still to come, Pastor Mark Lance with today's Connections. But up next, Brian Bush with the latest news from Israel. We'll be right back.